Beyond Reason Radio.
Twitter forced to update fact check of Trump after some of it turns out to be wrong. I'm not making this up. That is an actual headline. It's an actual true story. So the fact check against Trump by Twitter had to get fact checked. Think about that for a minute. Twitter on Tuesday was forced to update, this is according to Mediaite, which is not a right-wing source. Twitter on Tuesday was forced to update a fact check of President Donald Trump's vote by mail tweet after conflating the difference between vote by mail and absentee voting. There was an error in Twitter's fact check of Trump's vote by mail tweets, underscoring the challenge social media platforms face trying to arbitrate truth, Wall Street Journal reporter Dustin Voles wrote on Twitter. It was corrected after an election professional notified the company and me about the mistake. The platform originally stated mail-in ballots are already used in some states, including Oregon, Utah, and Nebraska. That statement appears to conflate automatic to all-mail voting with absentee ballots in regard to at least one state. The difference, and this actually matters a lot, Nebraska mailed applications to every voter in response to the coronavirus pandemic, but did not automatically send all voters ballots. Twitter on Tuesday included a message on a tweet from the president calling mail-in balloting substantially fraudulent. The message led to a page on Twitter headline, Trump makes unsubstantiated claim that mail-in ballots will lead to voter fraud. But, I mean, this is the obvious problem with Twitter going down this road, is it not? How in the world are they going to be able to do this? They can't. It is, well, beyond reason. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. We are on till 8 p.m. tonight right here on News Radio WFLA Orlando. If you miss any of the show, you can catch it on Facebook. We're on Facebook Live as well. You can like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page. And we are also on the iHeartRadio app, and you can catch the podcast anywhere that podcasts are available after the show. And we have a lot to talk about. And believe it or not, most of it doesn't have anything to do with the pandemic. It's unbelievable.
Or politics, really.
Yeah, well, some of it does. Yeah. But yeah, not the usual partisan politics. Not the usual who's going to win an election kind of politics. But it has to deal with Trump, of course. You know, if it's not the pandemic, it's Trump, I guess.
Oh, he loves it when the world revolves around him.
I think he said that once. I think he actually said
really
in an interview that, not those exact words, but he said in an interview when he's bored with the news coverage, he'll tweet out something to get the news talking about him again. It's just, by the way, the voice you hear in the control room is once again Mr. Tom Benton. How are you, Tom?
I think the caveat to Twitter doing fact-checking is the world according to Twitter. You know, it's they look at things with the prism in their eye, and that's they think what they find is the truth, and that's not always the case.
Yeah, you start to go down that road into politics, and their bias is obviously going to show.
Sure.
It's obviously going to show. But once you police one person, you have to police everyone, and it just becomes unmanageable. That's not what Twitter was meant to be. It's not what Twitter's all about. We're going to get into that in just a moment. Of course, I have more to talk about on that. But I guess we have to talk about the other Twitter controversy dealing with President Trump. And that has to do with this whole Joe Scarborough thing. And what he's saying about Joe Scarborough. Let me just read you some of the tweets that he put out there. It started, May 24th. A lot of interest in this story about psycho Joe Scarborough. So a young marathon runner just happened to faint in his office, hit her head on his desk, and die. I would think there was a lot more to this story than that. An affair? What about the so-called investigator? Read story. So not only does he trash Joe in that tweet, but he trashes the woman who was who died.
Yeah,
wasn't killed, who died,
yeah.
And says, "Oh, well, she must have been having an affair." Now the this is already a shut case. The family of the girl who died wants these tweets removed by Trump.
Mm-hmm. That's understandable.
That to me says something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they don't think there was any foul play, but Trump does.
She had an undisclosed heart ailment, supposedly.
Yeah, and then she hit her head.
Mm-hmm. That too. That would hurt.
And then May 26, Trump tweeted about this again. The opening of a cold case against psycho Joe Scarborough was not a Donald Trump original thought. Oh, well, then that just excuses it, right? This has been going on for years, long before I joined the chorus. In 2016, when Joe and his wacky future ex-wife, Mika, would endlessly interview me, I would always be thinking about whether or not Joe could have done such a horrible thing.
Oh, jeez.
Obviously, he didn't care. He was like buddy-buddy with them.
Sure, at one time.
Obviously, it didn't bother him back then.
Yeah.
Maybe or maybe not, but I find Joe to be a total nut job, and I knew him well, far better than most. You were friends with him, so you were friends with a nut job is what you're saying. Of course, they could say that because Joe calls Trump a nut job all the time, so Joe, you could say the same criticism about Scarborough.
It takes a nut to know a nut.
Yeah. So many unanswered and obvious questions, but I won't bring them up now. Law enforcement eventually will. No, I don't think they will. I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, geez, this happened almost 20 years ago.
I know. There's no evidence. Psycho Joe Scarborough, this came later. Psycho Joe Scarborough is rattled not only by his bad ratings, but all the things and facts that are coming out on the internet. Oh, well, it's coming out on the internet, so it must be true. About opening a cold case, he knows what is happening. So
you got to wonder, why would the president of the United States get involved in such a slimy, grimy situation like this?
People like me continue to hope, and no, it's a false hope. It's never going to change. But people like me wish that he would understand that when you're president of the United States, you have a higher responsibility than this stuff. When you're just some reality TV host or you're just some pundit putting out stuff on social media, it's different. It's still bad, but it's different. You can kind of get away with that stuff. You're just a character.
Right.
But now you are president of the United States. You are supposed to be the leader of the free world. You are supposed to rise above this stuff. Now, you could argue, oh, well, Joe Scarborough should rise above this stuff too. Okay. Sure, there's stuff he says that I disagree with and I talk about on the show all the time, but he's not the president of the United States. I wish Trump would understand the full responsibility of his office, that it's much bigger than just him and this stuff he gets involved with.
Do you think there's anyone in the president's family that walk into the Oval Office, put their hands up in the air and say, "What are you doing?"
Oh, I'm sure. I'm totally sure.
Makes no impact on him?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't grasp what I'm saying right now, that there is a greater responsibility here. It just doesn't comprehend in his head. He has lived in that world for so long as the public figure he was that he just can't change now that he's president. And he's mad, maybe rightfully so, but he's mad at Joe Scarborough because they were friends. They were buddy-buddy. He likes the show, even though he doesn't want to admit it. And then he turns it on now, and every time he turns it on, they're trashing him. So he thinks he's getting back at him. Oh, I'm going to get him back. I'm going to fight back. And people always tell me, well, he's a fighter. That's what I like about him. He fights back.
Yeah.
I heard somebody say, and I agree, this isn't fighting, it's whining at this point. This isn't fighting, it's whining. This is not fighting. Would you want someone like this to go into battle with you? I don't think so.
Here we go again.
This is, I just wish he would fight smart.
Sure.
I don't mind fighting. I played a whole thing with Dan Crenshaw, the Texas Republican congressman who fought back against Bill Maher on his show.
Brilliant.
But he was brilliant, and he did it the right way.
Yeah.
I don't mind fighting. We need to fight. We need to fight for freedom. But fight smart. Don't do this. It's not right.
Like two 12-year-olds at a playground, schoolyard playground.
Yeah. And you know what really bothers me about this, other than the fact that it's just the wrong thing to do, to bring up a dead person like this and destroy her and her family now, her reputation and her family. It's just not right. But what else bothers me about this is every time now I criticize someone on the left, I criticize a Democrat for doing stupid stuff that they do, I always get the whataboutism by people. Well, Trump does it too. Yeah. Well, Trump did this, which is similar to that. And it's hard to argue against when people say that to me because we have now lost the moral high ground. Mm-hmm. It's hard to win arguments. It's hard to win hearts and minds when all they can do is point to your guy who is Trump doing stuff just as bad sometimes. And we're losing the argument because of that, because we've lost the moral. That was the one thing I've been worried about with Trump since the beginning of his presidency, that we have now lost the moral high ground, and it's going to be incredibly difficult to get this back. You have the diehard Trump supporters who are going to be on board, but if Trump loses the next election, even they're going to start to go away. Because once the winning streak that I hear is over, they're even going to start to go away in some respects. They're going to want someone who actually wins. And this is the biggest thing that hurts him and hurts his chances of winning re-election. And this should be easy. You talk about Biden, this should be an easy election to win. He has got it made with an opponent right now, and he still might lose because of stuff like this. And people I know are going to say, well, he fights, he does this, he's a winner. He hasn't won everything. The Democrats won the House of Representatives last time. The wall still hasn't been built. Obamacare still hasn't been repealed. The only thing there are certain things he has accomplished, which I praised him on this show for. But this stuff, it's not good for the culture. It's not good for the country. It's not good for the Republican Party.
You have to pick your battles, and you can't fight every little skirmish that comes around.
And he's not going to change, though. He's not going to change. We all know he's not going to change. And people will ask, so why did you vote for Trump then? Why did you vote for Trump then? Well, I was a reluctant Trump voter. I did not vote for him in the primary. But the main reason I voted for him is, as bad as this Twitter stuff is, it doesn't affect my freedom. He's not trying to take away my freedom. And the Democrats have revealed themselves, especially during this pandemic, that sometimes they're a little too eager to take away our freedoms, especially when it comes to free markets. But, I mean, this pandemic has totally revealed that the Democrats will use anything to start taking away freedoms. And Trump's tweets don't really affect my personal life other than it just hurts the culture. So, I mean, that's why I ended up voting for him in the big scheme of things.
For me, it was a single voting incident. I wanted somebody who's going to go with conservative judges on the Supreme Court.
And
everything else is politics.
Yeah, and a lot of people voted for him for that reason. But, man, this is not going to energize people to go out and vote for you, especially right now. And I know a lot of Trumpers listening to me don't want to believe that. But you'll find out. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee. We will be right back.
Listen to the latest episodes of Beyond Reason. Download the podcast at Spreaker.com. Your voice of truth in a world of fake news. Beyond Reason Radio continues right now.
Yes, welcome back to the show. This is Beyond Reason Radio, Orlando Smart Talk Radio. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Michael Yaffee. You can also like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page or like the WFLA Orlando Facebook page. Just have to mention it was sad that the SpaceX launch ended up being scrubbed today because of weather. I mean, I literally heard thunder in my area, and then like 2 seconds later I got an update. Oh, it's scrubbed. So I'm like, okay, I'm not surprised.
I'm surprised they held off as long as they did. I would have thought earlier today. They had a tornado warning at one point early this afternoon.
They did. The good news is it's going to happen Saturday at after 3 p.m., I believe.
3:20.
3:20 p.m. Yeah. I'm debating on whether to drive out there and see it up close. I just don't know where you would be able to go, like other than like the side of the road. I don't know, but I've never seen a launch that close before.
Oh, I have. Oh, it's something.
Yeah, I never got to see the space shuttle launch from that close. I saw it all the time from Orlando.
Sure.
But I would love to be able to see a launch up close.
What you got to do is get close enough to feel the vibration. That's a trip.
Man, I would love that. So I might try to figure out a way to do that and take the fiance along with me. We're talking about President Trump and Twitter, and the other controversy going on has to do with Twitter has decided they want to start fact-checking Trump. So they wanted to play a middle ground here, it looks like. They didn't want to censor Trump and take down his tweets, but they wanted to placate the left and start putting up these so-called fact checks. And I mentioned at the beginning of the show, their fact check had to be fact-checked, which is a problem. There's breaking news today, which is very interesting, getting this from the Hill right now. Some Republicans are apparently working on legislation to strip Twitter of federal liability protections. What that means, a couple of Republicans, including Republican Matt Gaetz out of here, Florida, they announced they were both working on legislation to strip Twitter of federal protections that ensure the company is not held liable for what is posted on its platform. So
that would kill it.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't fact check everything that everybody writes.
Yeah, the lawmakers, well, and that's the point.
Yeah.
The lawmakers began work on legislation following Twitter's decision to add warnings to 2 tweets by President Trump this week in which he railed against California's decision to expand mail-in voting. Let's see. Like, what's the first tweet? There was one tweet on May 26 where Trump said this. He said, "There is no way, zero, the mail-in ballots will be anything less than substantially fraudulent. Mailboxes will be robbed, ballots will be forged and even illegally printed out and fraudulently signed. The governor of California is sending ballots to millions of people." So there you go. But then he later tweeted, because Twitter decided to do the fact-checking thing, says, "Twitter is now interfering in the 2020 presidential election. They are saying my statement on mail-in ballots, which will lead to massive corruption and fraud, is incorrect, based on fact-checking by fake news CNN and the Amazon Washington Post." So he also said today, "Republicans feel that social media platforms totally silence conservative voices. We will strongly regulate or close them down," which I don't think the response to censorship is more censorship, but that's where Trump's going. Like you said, he fights fire with fire. I understand what he's trying to do. We saw what they attempted to do and failed in 2016. We can't let a more sophisticated version of that happen. So what they're trying to do basically is pressure Twitter to stop doing this fact check thing. And I just don't understand why Twitter decided to go down this road. Because they have these federal protections against liability for things on their page. So you have the protection, so just let it be the platform that it is. Now, Twitter can do whatever it wants. It's a private company, except, fine, if you're going to do whatever you want and you are a private company, then and you decide to do something like this, well, the federal government can take away your protections. So you can't automatically do whatever you want, I guess. But if you're going to be an open platform, just be an open platform. Now, I had people on the left on Twitter today were saying, well, Twitter had to do something. Mm-hmm. No, they didn't. They didn't have to do anything. Just leave it as it is, because that's what Twitter is. It's basically a bulletin board for people to say things. So,
as stupid as they may be.
Yeah. Once you start to go down this road, it's going to be almost impossible to manage.
Sure.
You're going to go down the political bias road. That's going to happen because people in Twitter in that area of the country are definitely biased to the left.
And somebody is always going to be upset with something somebody says. There's no way to get around.
They're going to point that out. There's going to be lawsuits. Now, a voice of reason on this, a good voice of reason on this earlier on Fox News was Newt Gingrich, believe it or not. I thought he's exactly right. It's really kind of dumb as a company, I think, for Twitter to go down this road. They're doing it for public relations reasons. But I think Newt's right here. Here's what he said.
Well, look, I think it has to be a great concern, certainly to any conservative, that the three key social media, Twitter, Facebook, and Google, are all located in one of the most radical left-wing parts of America. And they express that in their biases. What Twitter called fact check was not true. They went to left-wing publications to get a left-wing version. The president is correct. We've seen a lot of theft of votes. We've seen a lot of mail being lost. There are all sorts of challenges with going to an all-mail program for voting. And for Twitter to suggest otherwise is just false. And I also think it's dangerous to have institutions that big that are prepared. I mean, it would be as though AT&T decided that they could censor what he said on the telephone. I think it's very dangerous. I think Twitter is going down a very dangerous path. And if they're not careful, they're going to become a regulated public institution rather than a totally free entrepreneurial institution.
I think he's exactly right there. Twitter's going to have a problem with this. I think they're going to end up having to back down because it's just unmanageable. But we'll see. Maybe they'll try to stick it out and try to get help from Democrats in Congress. I guess. I don't know. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Download the iHeartRadio app and catch the Beyond Reason Radio podcast. Your safe space for conservative thought, not for political correctness. Yaffee is back right now.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I already have some people responding to me on Facebook and other places saying, can you really blame Trump with what the Democrats do? Trump's just fighting back. But the problem I have with how Trump fights back is we lose the moral high ground. And when you lose the moral high ground, it's very, very difficult to win hearts and minds. And we have such an opportunity to win more hearts and minds right now. It should be very easy. A lot of people should be upset at what the Democrats are doing, but anytime I talk about something, they just say, well, Trump did it too. And a lot of times I get, what do I say to that? You started it? Is that how I say it? I mean, you just started sounding like a 5-year-old. I don't know. That's the only issue I have. I don't mind them fighting, just fight smarter. Now, we have to get into this crazy story out of New York City. They're calling it the Central Park Karen story.
Karen, yeah.
Yeah, Karen is this sort of caricature now of when one of these a woman acts kind of crazy.
Well,
and how would you
instead of calling the person an unidentified perp or whatever, they call her Karen, and they display a certain attitude against others that they don't necessarily like.
A lot of times they act like they're better than themselves, and they get hyper emotional against someone else for doing something they believe is wrong and all of this stuff. But
with apologies to any Karen in the real world.
I know. I feel bad for real Karen. There's some really nice Karens out there. They're getting trashed. But this the girl's name, Amy Cooper. She got in a verbal dispute with
a bird watcher
named Christian Cooper, which they're not related, but it's interesting they have the same last name.
Yeah.
We're going to play the audio here, but it all started because she was in an area where she had her dog.
This is in New York City in Central Park.
Mm-hmm. Had her dog, was not on the leash. So Christian Cooper called her out and said, you need to put a leash on the dog. Well, Karen, see, I just called her Karen. Her name's Amy. I think I'll just keep calling her Karen. It's easier. The Central Park Karen started saying no and then freaking out because he started taking video and yada, yada, yada. Here is some of the audio of that exchange.
Would you please stop? Sir, I'm asking you to stop.
Please don't come close to me.
Sir, I'm asking you to stop recording me.
Please don't come close to me.
Please take your phone off.
Please don't come close to
And
me.
I'm taking a picture and calling the cops.
Please call the cops. Please call the cops.
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
Please tell them whatever you like.
Excuse me? I'm sorry, I'm in the Ramble, and there is a man, African-American, he has a bicycle helmet. He is recording me and threatening me and my dog. There is an African-American man, I am in Central Park. He is recording me and threatening myself and my dog. And my... I'm sorry, I can't hear you either. I'm being threatened by a man in the Ramble. Please send the cops immediately. I'm in Central Park in the Ramble. I don't know.
Thank you.
Now he says thank you because she finally put a leash on the dog. She was like choking the dog when she was on the phone and finally put a leash on the dog, which is all he wanted. But, I mean, obviously something not right with this girl, okay? She seems a little unhinged for really no reason. I mean, to freak out like that, there was no reason for her to freak out like that. Now, I do want to get the other side of the story here, just to be fair. Christian Cooper, the guy in the video, he put out a timeline of things that were said, and he did do something that kind of escalated the situation. So here's the timeline he put on his Facebook. He said, ma'am, dogs in the Ramble have to be on a leash at all times. The sign is right there. And she said the dog runs are closed. He needs his exercise. All you have to do is take him to the other side of the drive outside the Ramble, and you can let him run off the leash all you want, he said. She says it's too dangerous. He said, look, if you're going to do what you want, I'm going to do what I want, but you're not going to like it. She says, what's that? And then he goes to the dog and says, come here, puppy, and pulled out some dog treats. And then she said, he won't come to you. And he said, we'll see about that. That's when he pulled out the dog treats, which he said he carries for just such intransigence. Why are you carrying dog treats to lure dogs away from people who don't have them on a leash? It's a little weird. And then she freaked out. So he didn't make the situation any better by trying to lure the dog away from her and stuff like that. But she obviously freaked out a little bit too much. She obviously was kind of being racist by making sure she told the cops he was an African-American man because she felt like then the cops would respond more quickly or something like that, and she would seem even more scared. The whole thing is bad, okay? I can't defend what she did. Just put a leash on the dog and go away.
You're right. Walk away. Yeah.
And, I don't even mind him taking cell phone video because if she is calling the police, he would need proof that he didn't do anything wrong. I don't have a problem with that.
Correct.
But I did post something on social media yesterday that people were totally misinterpreting, as usual, I guess. And this happened after she got fired. So they found out who she was in the video because it looks like, I don't know if he was the first one to post it, but I think his wife posted the whole video on Twitter and saying something like, I had it. It was something like trashing her or whatever, calling her a Karen and all that stuff.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And
they found out where she worked.
Yeah, and she got fired from her job. And so I posted this on Twitter in response. I said, I'm not saying this woman did anything right in this situation, but I am truly worried about the culture of retribution, shame, hatred, and destruction we're creating. Some will say this is about fighting injustice, fighting injustice against what this girl did. But I don't think this is justice by posting this on social media. Justice is not what the Twitter mob is seeking here. It's about revenge. Revenge and justice are not the same. We've destroyed someone's life, meaning this girl, and for what? So we can virtue signal and get some retweets? Does publicly shaming this person make society better? No, I don't think it does. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and self-control are what makes society better. If you get your kicks off destroying someone you don't like, then there's also something wrong with you. And yes, before anyone else says it, unfortunately, Trump, as I mentioned earlier in the show, is not setting the best example because he often tries to destroy people on his Twitter, including Joe Scarborough and Jeff Sessions, which is petty and wrong. Now, people were kind of interpreting this that I was defending what this woman did. I'm not defending what she did. And other people were saying, what, you're sad because she lost her job? Or you're mad at the company for firing her? I'm not mad at the company. I understand why the company did it. I'm not really mad at the company for firing her. I'm not really upset that she lost her job. I don't know her. She seems kind of crazy to me. I was trying to look at the bigger picture here. The point I was making is, why was this posted on social media in the first place? Why? What was the point on posting this video of this woman on social media? The only reason she did it, the only reason someone did this, was to publicly shame this person, was to publicly trash this person, was to make her look bad and possibly destroy her life by going viral and the Twitter mob constantly bashing this woman and finding out who she is and then destroying her life. And that's what I'm criticizing. Why do we have to do this? Why is it that he can't just keep the video, be upset at her, and if the cops come, show the cops he did nothing wrong? Why do we have to post this on social media and destroy someone's life over this? And people do this all the time. There is this culture now of wanting to publicly shame people that you don't like, and to have this culture of revenge. To me, this is not a good thing. I don't think this is the right way to go. That maybe we should, okay, it's not a good situation. I don't like her, but maybe I'll just let it go and forgive her. But we can't do that anymore, can we? Instead, we have these mobs. They're on social media, but they're mobs. They're basically going out with pitchforks and torches almost. Just, they're doing it via social media to try to destroy this woman.
It's sort of like we got to win, you know?
Yeah.
I get the last word and I get the win.
Yeah. What good is destroying this woman's life? What good is this for society? Is this really helping us as a culture? Some people think so. Some people think, oh, well, she could have got him killed by calling the cops. Now, I don't believe that we need to start this narrative that every time you call the cops on a minority, that means you could have got them killed. Now, there are bad situations between cops and minorities. We're going to talk about that in the next segment. A really bad situation out of Minneapolis. But I'm not going to start peddling this lie and being prejudiced towards cops, all cops, and saying you can't call a cop on a minority now. I mean, I just don't think that's accurate. But, yeah, what she did was wrong. But it's not good enough to just say what she did was wrong and let it go. Why do we have to destroy people? I just don't think it's good. I don't think it's good for our culture.
Well, the way it ended is the police did arrive. Mm-hmm. Both parties were interviewed. No citations, no arrests made.
No, of course.
And the cops wrote it off to an argument. Verbal argument.
Of course not. And that's what cops would most of the time do in that situation. So, I mean, it's just... That's where it should have ended. That is where it should have ended. But it couldn't end there because of social media. And it just bothers me. It bothers me. And unfortunately, President Trump's no better in this regard. So we have to talk about the fact that a man, an unarmed black man, while being arrested, was killed by a police officer in Minneapolis. We'll get to that next. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you miss any of the show, you can download the Beyond Reason podcast on iTunes. This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. Beyond Reason Radio continues now.
Yes, welcome back to the show. We have to get to the other really important story, this one out of Minneapolis. I told you that there's like nothing in the show today about the pandemic, about coronavirus. It's kind of amazing. I guess because there's good news, we're opening up, and it seems like in a lot of places in the country, hospitalizations are down.
New York had its lowest death total since it all began.
Yeah.
A daily death total.
I mean, it's good news. So hopefully we'll continue to open things up even more, and my wedding will go on as planned at the end of June.
Oh, that's what this is really all about, huh?
Yes. Yeah, that's all. Just my selfish motivations. What can I say? We are telling people to bring masks as they want to. Just want to point that out. We practice the CDC guidelines. There will be social distancing.
Good citizenship.
I try.
Yeah.
So this story out of Minneapolis, where based on video, Officer Derek Chauvin, he's an officer there. They arrested a guy by the name of George Floyd, a black man. Mm-hmm. And in the video, you see the officer with his knee on George's neck while he's on the ground. Now, I'm going to play some of the audio from that. It's pretty disturbing, but we have to play it to get more perspective on how there is absolutely no excuse, in my opinion, for what this officer did. Here it is.
Well, you got him down, man. Let him breathe, at least, man. I can't breathe. I've been trying to help out. So he breathe a little bit more. Neck, man. One of my homies died. He went back home. I'm about to die, just say. Why? Man, I can't breathe my face. Just get up. What do you want? I can't breathe.
So that was only part of it. That goes on for several minutes. The bystanders are the ones saying, he can't breathe. Let him up so he can breathe. You hear him say over and over on the ground, I can't breathe. Get off my neck. There's another part, which I didn't play, where he literally says, don't kill me. Please don't kill me. But he ends up dying from this. So they did kill him. I don't understand why the cop thought this was a good idea. I don't understand how anyone could possibly justify this. Now, the mayor of Minneapolis, he was out there. He agreed because they ended up firing the 4 officers involved in all of this. I mean, this guy was he was accused of a forgery, not even a violent crime. Now, the mayor of Minneapolis called Wednesday for criminal charges to be filed against the white police officer seen on video kneeling against the neck of the handcuffed black man. Now, the family's coming out and saying he should be charged with murder. Now, I don't know the legalese on that. I don't think he necessarily intended to kill him. So I don't know if that's considered murder. Maybe it's second-degree murder or a type of manslaughter. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But something. And it's good that he's fired, but why would this cop... When you watch the video, it's just totally obvious. Just take your knee off his neck so he can breathe. That's it. And there's even more video out now that he really wasn't resisting. They dragged him out of the car. And I just can't understand, especially after the Eric Garner thing a few years ago, which I actually defended the cops in that situation. Because that all happened very quick and they were trying to subdue the guy, and it was obvious they were trying to subdue the guy. This one, there was no reason for the cop to be doing this. And it's on video, and he knows it's on video, and he continues to do it. Why? And this is really not good for the culture. So now we have a trend going on, and it's hard to blame people for believing this, I guess, when you see video like this. But we have a trend going on where people are saying anytime you call the cops on a minority, you could get them killed. Now, I think that's way too extreme. The vast majority of cops are good people. I don't think we should be prejudiced towards blacks and profile and arrest them just because they're black. But I also think we should not be prejudiced towards cops. We shouldn't prejudge someone just because they have the badge. So prejudice needs to go both, anti-prejudice needs to go both ways here. But there's going to be more protests. There's going to be more riots. People are not going to trust the cops if cops keep doing this. I just can't understand. Now, the only silver lining I see in all of this, frankly, is I'm not seeing anyone really justify what the cop did. Mm-hmm. I'm not seeing a political divide here. I mean, I'm sure they are on the fringes. There's always going to be people like that on the fringes who say crazy things. But in general, people on both sides of the aisle, people on all sides of this issue, I'm not seeing any of them justify what this cop did because there seems to be no justification. So if there's any good news, the good news is we can at least agree on the fact that the cop was wrong in this situation, should probably be arrested. It was the right call to fire him, and this should not have happened. Should not have happened. So I just had to point that out there. Should we end the show with something a little bit lighter? Tom Benson?
Do you mean?
Time? Yes. Things that made Yaffee Laffee. All right. So, we have one thing that made Yaffee Laffee. This has been going around, but it is pretty funny. There was a report going on MSNBC where it was all about basically looking around in the area. I believe they're in Wisconsin, and people were not wearing masks. And it was kind of point out, oh, these people are not wearing masks. They should be wearing masks. Nobody's concerned. So listen to what happens during this report. Here it is.
So are the people there just not worried about it, Cal? Are they not worried about their own personal safety?
I haven't met anybody who is. I met some folks actually from Lake Geneva who lived in the area. They were staying a few miles outside of town where I were, and they said they're worried about it. They're worried about that second spike. They're worried about folks coming in from Chicago. But they'll quickly add at the same time, this is a place that relies on that business. I think people here want a little bit more funding when it comes to these programs so that they could stay closed. But again, I think people felt like the Supreme Court made the decision here in Wisconsin that it was time to open up. But you can see, here, just around. Nobody's wearing them. Nobody's, there you go, including the cameraman. Yeah.
Yeah, including the cameraman.
Striking images. Cal Perry. Cal, thank you very much.
Striking images.
So there was a bystander who was, watching and taking video of them, and he runs by and they said, no, not wearing a mask. See, they're not wearing masks. And the guy said, including your cameraman.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, yeah. And then he looks over and he says, half of your crew are not wearing masks. I mean,
do as I say.
Come on.
Not as I do.
And it really doesn't matter that much. You're outside.
Yeah.
Like, why is the reporter wearing a mask? He's outside, not really around. I mean, I guess there were some people around, but like people are making a big deal over the weekend that Joe Biden wore a mask on Memorial Day, and he went outside, and then he posts on Twitter, "Wear a mask." And I'm thinking, you're outside. You're not around anyone. Why aren't you wearing? Why are you wearing it? There's no purpose in you wearing it. He was only next to his wife, and he's been in a home with his wife without masks for weeks now, so that's unnecessary. So people are like, oh, look at Biden doing the right thing. And that's not doing the right thing. There's no guideline you have to wear it outside when no one's around. It's just a political stunt. That's all it is. I mean, come on. Biden should be so easy to beat, I think. I would not be confident. Even with all of Trump's faults, I would not be confident if my guy is Joe Biden. Appreciate you listening to another edition of Beyond Reason Radio. Make sure to catch the podcast anywhere that podcasts are available. Like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page. I'll be back tomorrow at the same time. Check you guys in.